Welcome back to the latest episode of the CGA Tour Podcast. As always here, I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander, and this week it's another podcast with Jake. So, it's talking about Oklahoma State sports. Jake, how's it going?
It's going well. It's warm here. But,
okay.
Yeah. It was 75 degrees on Christmas. Yeah, it's 75 degrees on Christmas.
I have to say, I think it was about that in Arkansas/Oklahoma, kind of the part of the country that I was in. It was a fairly warm Christmas. I'm looking up the current weather temperature here in Los Angeles, and I have to say, I'm pretty sure it's going to be worse than Atlanta. No matter what, it's just got to be worse.
But at least you get to go to the beach, right?
True. That is a great point. I think I might hold off till next week, though, because currently it's raining, and it's raining until I actually leave for the Fiesta Bowl. So it's raining right now, raining through basically until Friday. So probably going to hold off a little bit on the beach. Yeah.
Raining in LA. Raining in LA.
Oh, yeah. No one knows how to drive because there's never any weather. Always a good time. But with all that being said, and your frequent weather updates from Calvin and Jake here, I do want to say, so last week we did a podcast with my roommate, but Texas alum, Patrick, and we previewed the bowl games. I mean, matter of fact, it was an hour and 40-minute long podcast, so if you didn't listen to it so far, go check it out. I think it was a really good one. Sounds really good audio-wise, audio quality-wise too. So if you're curious what our thoughts are on Oklahoma State versus Notre Dame, it's true. We haven't changed our minds or discussions. We're only just knocking on wood and fingers crossed that the game's actually played. Because otherwise, there will be a long drive back for me.
Yeah, I will say it's been hard to keep up with bowl season this year. To no fault of anybody, obviously, but it's been tough because it's like maybe in the back of my head, I'm preparing to watch a game, and then I get an update that it's canceled, and I'm like, oh, wait, Clemson's still playing, and I had no, at this point now, I'm just anticipating all the games getting canceled, and, me not having any football to watch.
Sad, but I am holding that in the back of my mind for sure. I mean, there are 7 Big 12 teams that are playing bowl games. 2 are playing today / currently, Wednesday, December 29th. But, we saw Texas Tech play Mississippi State last night and West Virginia play Minnesota last night, right? Those 2.
Yep.
So, and then the 2 bowl games so far today, it looks like Iowa State Clemson. That's definitely going. So that happened. And they've got OU Oregon tonight. Who you got? Taking the Ducks or the Sooners?
I'm taking Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Not the only reason. The main reason is that Oregon's best players aren't playing.
And I would say the other thing is, if there's any team that plays like Utah, it's not OU probably. Let's just be honest. Utah runs a lot of the football, plays a lot of ground and pound. So I would favor Oregon in that regard. But on the other hand, OU has got to be smart enough to know how Utah beat Oregon and do a little bit more of that in the game. Maybe Oregon will just have the quickness and the speed on the outside. I doubt it because OU's a pretty darn good team usually year in, year out. And Pac-12 is a lot to be desired this year. But then we've got, of course, Oklahoma State, or Oak State, as a guy out here who went to Mizzou told me. So that was great. But Oklahoma State versus Notre Dame on Saturday. And then Baylor Ole Miss Saturday night.
That game is going to be interesting. I've listened and read a decent amount, and there's a lot of people that have absolutely no read on how that game's going to go, and I'm pretty much in the same boat.
Well, the SEC is so far winless in bowl season.
Yeah, but it doesn't count because they didn't take it seriously.
They don't care, right? We always hear that. Oh, they didn't care. Yeah. They opted out. They didn't care. Yeah. Well, you know what I'm going to say? If we lose to Notre Dame, we didn't care. We all opted out anyways.
Well, it doesn't. We can't.
We did not have any. I don't think we've had one guy opt out. I don't think so.
No.
I'm going to say that either way. No one will remember. No one will remember.
No.
We'll be fine.
Including me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll remember because I'll be making the joke about it, but that's it. And then, of course, the last Big 12 game, the last Big 12 team, to play in a game is January 4th, Tuesday. Got a K-State versus Tigers, LSU. Weird Cats playing Cats bowl game, Like,
yeah.
What are we doing here? Can't the Tax Act Texas Bowl just play it this week? Or all bowl games can play this week?
Do you know what I'm doing? Not watching that game.
It'll be on. It'll be on somewhere. I'll be at the gym. I'll see it, or I'll turn on for 15 minutes here and there.
You might wake up from a nap.
Eastern. It comes on at 8 Eastern, so I'll be like, I think there's all Eastern times. Maybe there's Central times, but.
So you might wake up from a nap and the game's on the TV.
If I wake up from a nap, it's probably mean I'm sleeping during work. So I'll be wide awake and then just turn it on. Be wide awake on a Tuesday afternoon. Just can't wait to see the Wildcats play the Tigers.
Yeah.
That was my best impersonation of someone from Louisiana. Anyways, so that was horrible. I'm not going to do that again. For at least the time being. But I got to say, so if you missed the last podcast, Patrick basically chose Notre Dame. He's having Notre Dame. He thinks they're going to beat us 21-17. Both Jake and I said OSU. I said OSU 20-17, I think. Maybe I had that flip-flop. Maybe Patrick said 2017 Notre Dame, and I'm saying 21-17 OSU. And then what did you – do you remember your score prediction? I know you had OSU.
Yeah, it was – It was like 24-21 or something. It was maybe 21-17. It was very close to what Patrick's was.
Yeah, just flipped.
Yeah,
the better team wins. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully. But it's nothing crazy. So
yeah. Well. So regardless of how this game turns out on Saturday. Did want to, of course, keep up with the weekly podcast here, but also ask you about the OSU season in whole. How do we feel about the season after it's over completely? I mean, I know we got the bowl game left here, but if we beat Notre Dame in historic fashion, last second field goal, you know what that means? We won the Fiesta Bowl. Awesome. 12-win season, second 12-win season under Gundy. Bunch of accolades come with it. Probably does make me feel a little bit better than not, but we'll recap that game. But it is a bowl game. We are done with the regular season. We actually played a championship game this year.
Yeah.
Fun, exciting. Now, of course, everyone knows how that went against Baylor, so it's not bringing it a yard and a half up again. But what were your thoughts on the whole season? After we're over and kind of finished.
If we were to do the whole give me one word to describe this year's season, I would definitely say surprised. I think you and I came into this season not very confident together. I mean, we both were just like, we have Spencer Sanders. We don't know who's playing running back. We could have a good defense. We don't really know. And we definitely don't know who's going to be playing receiver. All of those things were true through the first 6 games. Like they didn't really change. We still had Spencer Sanders. We didn't know, we knew what we would get from the defense, but if we're being honest, the defense didn't look anything spectacular in those first couple of games. I mean, we're playing Missouri State close, which I wouldn't really blame them for, but some of the other games were just kind of like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, Missouri State's weird without our starting quarterback, which Sanders wasn't the greatest quarterback ever. We're not saying that, but it is weird when the quarterback who's been practicing with your team and taking all first team reps isn't there for the first game.
Yeah, for sure. Boise State, that game was wonky and was always
bizarre.
Going to be. Yeah. It was always going to be. We know that because we're playing Boise State at Boise State. Was it on a Saturday?
It was on a Saturday. It was on a Saturday night, and all of our receivers besides Presley, Brennan, and walk-ons I should say only Presley and the walk-ons were available. All of our other receivers were out. Tay Martin,
Yeah.
And I think it was all COVID protocols, if I remember correctly. So it's just a bizarre thing to say the least. Just because you're going, how in the world did we win the game? Because you look at it, the amount of passes we had in the game is like the lowest OSU's ever had. I think we're 1 of 11 the first half in Boise State, yada, 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 all this type of stuff. But we won by 1. So we won,
And you and I mean, we both kind of said, if every single call was gotten correctly in that game, we probably should not have won. But at the end of the day, we did, and I don't think it necessarily impacted Boise State's season. Like, I would have felt bad if that probably was their only loss. I would have been like, they kind of got
it. But also, so the play you're talking about here is that basically we fumbled the ball.
Yeah.
I think their defense picks it up and could have ran all the way in for it to score, which would have put them up, I believe, 26-20, 26 to 18 or what, 26 to 14 or whatever.
Yeah.
It would have put the game pretty much out of reach because we hadn't been doing anything on offense the whole game. But the refs ruled it that originally that we didn't fumble it. That's exactly how they ruled it. And then they switched. So then it became Boise State's ball, but it didn't give them the touchdown, of course. So when they switch, but in all due respect, Boise State couldn't move the ball an inch, or couldn't get a first down, and we ended up blocking their game-winning try for the field goal. Now they missed it because Jason Taylor blocked it. So I don't feel too bad about that game just because, one, we're at their place. You would figure they would get the calls in that situation. And two, they had a chance with the ball. It's not like it was ruled our ball after the end of it. And it's like, oh, crap. Like, not only should it be their ball, but they also score. It's like, all right, like, I feel like a little bad. But like you said, they didn't, they're not currently playing Cincinnati, or somebody in the playoffs or Michigan, whoever. So,
right.
And they weren't vying for that either. So be it.
Yeah, it was. But I feel like after non-conference play, we kind of started to get our legs underneath us. And then especially after Iowa State, I mean, we didn't pull any tape or anything, but I want to say that you and I probably predicted 6-6, 7-5 as our record.
Yeah,
right?
I might have been a little bit more optimistic with some bigger wins and stuff like that. Just thinking we were 8-4 or something. That's probably where I was at. I might have been 9 games, but it definitely was not 11. No. Definitely not 11 wins for sure.
And I mean, realistically, we lost both games by, what was it, a combined six points? Or 8 points.
Oh, yeah, total. Yeah, we lost by combined 9. We lost by 8. Yeah.
8 points.
5 and 3. Yep.
So, I mean, that sucks. But if you go look at our wins, we won some games where we won 3 in a row and won by a combined 10 points. So, it's, you play with the cards you're dealt, but I would say at the end of the day, surprised. I was surprised by how the season went. I was surprised we were as good as we were. The defense was obviously very surprising. I wanted to talk about this a little bit. We brought it up before, the quarterback regression. I don't understand it. I don't understand. Spencer Sanders statistically has gotten worse over the years. Statistically. I don't understand how that happens.
Well, I don't necessarily understand how it happens. I don't know why he hasn't gotten better every single year. Now, I'd say that doesn't happen a ton in college football where a guy just vastly gets better every single year. Mm-hmm. But my thing with Sanders was my thing with Mason, and same deal with Zach Robinson a little bit, but I honestly don't remember that era too much, but definitely with Whedon as well, is that quarterbacks come into OSU and then don't necessarily get better. Like they don't necessarily progress through the offense and get better year over year. Now, the opposite seems to be true for wide receivers and running backs. They seem to get a lot better. But then again, I don't know if that's just because they got more playing time and they were already that good or not. Right? I have to be fair in all regards here. So when you are the quarterback, okay, perfect. But quarterback's really the one position with OSU where once you're the quarterback, you are the quarterback. Like there's no questions. You're getting the chance to start every single game as long as you're healthy and you're good to go. We're not really pulling guys, at least the last couple of times we've had quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
Spencer Sanders, reason why he didn't play at West Virginia until this season, in his third season starting, is because he was injured, right? Taylor Cornelius, indifferent thing, but he played a whole season. Right, there were a couple opportunities there where I would have been, you know what, maybe don't play him, but maybe do. I mean, never know, right?
Yeah,
I was probably I remember saying on several podcasts after the Cornelius season, so why in the world didn't Sanders get like a chance to start, or a chance to play? Because you have the weird, you can play 4 games and still have a red shirt. So I was like, that's kind of odd, whatever. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And then Rudolph, of course, started his final 3 games of the 2014 season, of course, at Baylor, at OU, which Tyreek Hill runs back, and then the bowl game that year because Tyreek Hill ran it back and tied the game. And then, he starts every year until he graduates, which is, I think right. Rudolph was great, but you would expect a guy who's, a starting quarterback who's, in his third season to be vying for Heisman Trophy consideration, which I think Rudolph was, to be honest.
Yeah.
The difference here is,
keyword is consideration.
Well,
keyword is, it's like we knew he's going to put up the stats. We know that.
But like Rudolph, would still miss a couple throws, would still kind of get injured and stuff. And I think with Gundy as the head coach, but also as a previous quarterback with the 2 best running backs college football's ever seen when Gundy was quarterback, you would think that quarterbacks would get a lot better and are coming through OSU, playing with different, spread offenses, all that type of stuff as well. What I do come back to is that Sanders has been injured. It's weird that he didn't have a lot better stats this year when he was injured in years prior, so that kind of makes sense, right? If he's playing with kind of an injury ongoing or whatever, and then his stats decline and then he is out. This year, it's weird because seemingly, besides the first game, he played every game, right? And so and started every game. So started 12 games because we ended up playing 13 in the regular season, and including the Baylor game. So it's weird that Sanders didn't get better throughout the season. Didn't start learning and understanding more of the defense and
I
kind of getting better.
I pulled up his statistics.
Yeah.
So we've talked about this completely baffling statistical anomaly where he threw the exact same number of passes and had the exact same number of completions in 2019 and 2020 on the year. So that was both 155 for 247. And his freshman year, he actually had more completions, or not more completions, more yards by 60. And then 2 more touchdowns, but also 3 more interceptions. And then the next year, he has just over 2,000 yards at 2,007. Then 14 touchdowns compared to 16, and then 8 interceptions the year before. Now we get to this year. He has 209 completions and 340 attempts, a lower completion percentage by 0.7%. So, neither of them are good, so it doesn't really matter. He obviously had more yards by about 400, but then he had 16 touchdowns compared to 12 picks, which is worse than his freshman year, where, he had about the same stats with 1 less pick and significantly less attempts, almost 100. And his rating also dropped by 13. it's just odd. It really is. And
the only quarterback in the Big 12 that I can think of that's had that's dropped off worse than Sanders is Brock Purdy. Purdy coming in. You know, I'm talking about Iowa State's fall from grace. They're currently losing to Clemson as we're recording the podcast here. And I just think Clemson's defense is pretty darn good. But, man, just Brock Purdy and Breece Hall not carrying the Big 12 here. You know, not the two guys coming out of the Big 12 are like, oh, my gosh, you know, wow, this is the year for them to take over. Oh, he's having a down year. Here's Iowa State's chance. Here's Matt Campbell's chance. I got to say it's the exact opposite. Would you rather have Matt Campbell as your head coach for this season or Mike Gundy as your head coach for this season? I know what my answer is. And I think you know what my answer is too, right?
Can I say neither?
Well, I mean, sure. I mean, you can say Jim Knowles. yeah, exactly right. But definitely my answer for sure this season is Gundy. Besides the loss at Iowa State, I have really no huge issues with Gundy on losses.
Yeah.
I have no, and now, of course, like I am a college football fan, diehard OSU fan. If you're watching this one on YouTube or whatever, you can see that we're in, of course, Oklahoma State hat. This is not Oregon State. And I've got a huge Cowboy flag behind me as well as the scarf. But I really only have like an issue or two with Gundy the whole season, and that's like the Iowa State game. And I think it's also the Baylor game. Of course, the rematch it's the two games that we lost. We lost by a combined total of 8 points. And the Iowa State game, I wish we had just, you know, I wish we hadn't kicked a field goal when we did. I wish we had gone for it, whatever. And then the Baylor game, I wish that we had tried a quarterback sneak on the drive that we ended up kicking a field goal to cut it to 5 instead of 8, which we tried a quarterback sneak in the end zone. But like those are the two things. And honestly, for a college football fan to have issues with head coach, I don't think that's a lot. I think it's pretty small things. Now, Gundy off the field stuff, there's plenty, you know, to go around about. There's plenty of rumors. There's plenty of intrigue, whatever. But besides the Gundy stuff, right? This was an insanely good season for OSU. Insanely great season, you know, considering what our expectations were, too. So I'm happy. I'm really happy with how the season went and turned out to be. Do I wish that things had broken differently? Of course. Probably the only team that doesn't wish things had broken differently is Cincinnati or maybe Bama. But Michigan's probably wishing they had beat Michigan State because then they'd be number 1 overall and be playing Cincinnati, right?
Yeah.
Cincinnati, I don't know if they could wish that much differently because they are undefeated and they're in it. And Alabama, yeah, I'm sure they wish they hadn't lost to A&M, but they're still number 1 team in the country, so I don't know if they're that mad about it, to be honest.
Hey, remember, the A&M players said we come to A&M to beat Alabama.
Well, but also remember that Alabama just didn't care that game. They just, we didn't care about that one. It didn't matter.
Did you see those quotes, though?
No, I didn't.
A lot of the A&M fans, or a lot of the A&M players, maybe not a lot, but a couple came out and were like, yeah, Alabama players go to Alabama and they don't play or whatever, but we come to A&M to beat Alabama. And everyone's like, no, we go to Alabama to win national championships.
Is that the classic? So I've got a best friend that I went to high school with who went to OU. Big OU fan, you know, graduated from OU. His dad has a master's from Oklahoma State, but went to his undergrad at OU too. So he likes to give me a hard time, and he's like, "Man, OSU, your whole entire season was made when you guys beat us. It doesn't matter. Nothing else matters after that." And I gotta say, sure, Gundy's beat OU now 3 times in 17 seasons. Yeah, it's gonna matter when we beat OU for sure. But is A&M holding that win over a potential bowl win? For sure, right? Like, because you just don't beat these teams.
I would rather beat OU than beat Notre Dame.
Right?
Because at the end of the day, my thing is we're not in the Fiesta Bowl if we don't beat OU. So it's kind of like that part wouldn't make any sense.
Well, but also like coming into the season,
Mm-hmm.
if I said, hey, we're either going to be OU or Notre Dame, which would you rather? It's OU.
It's OU. I don't
It's
care
OU.
about Notre Dame. I don't care about Notre Dame.
Don't care about Notre Dame. The only time I would have cared in this hypothesis is, oh, that means we're playing the national championship, right? In theory. That'd be the only case where I go, okay, right?
We're in the playoff.
But, well, yeah, we're in the playoff. True. The other part of this entirely here is that this was a really good season, but this was not the best roster we put forward.
No.
It was not at all. I mean, you've got a transfer wide receiver, Tay Martin, leading the team in receptions. A transfer running back in Jalen Warren leading the team in every rushing category statistically.
Yep.
And then that completely contrasts with how you thought the season, or at least how I thought the season was going to go coming in. And we're talking about, coming into the season, Braden Johnson, number 8. He on the season finished with 13 yards and 1 reception. Right? I think he got injured or had a personal thing.
Right? Something.
Yeah. It was gone. Tay Martin. Now, I thought Tay Martin, okay, he's going to be probably pretty darn good. But do you know what his average per game? I don't know. No, there's no way. Tay Martin finished the season with 1 touchdown. This must be rushing. That must be rushing. Yeah. I'm looking at the wrong stats here. I'm sorry, guys. But regardless, I think I'm clearly looking at the wrong thing. Tay Martin finished the season with 1 yard rushing on average and 1 touchdown rushing. But yeah.
You and I, we expected Tay Martin to be a bigger part of the offense last year.
For sure. And then it was like, okay, all right, well, maybe Braden Johnson, because he's shown some flashes.
Yeah.
Been pretty good. Maybe him and Tay Martin, all right. And then maybe the Presley kid. But also, like, this is year whatever of Spencer. If anything at all, I thought last season with Chuba and Tylen would be like what this season was.
Right. Yeah. And especially like defensively coming into the year, I mean, we lost our best 2 guys on paper, like right out the gate. Right? Like Trace Ford and I always get them mixed up. Harvell Peel. Is that who it was?
Trey Sterling. I think it was Trey Sterling.
Trey Sterling. Yeah. They were both, they're both really good safeties. Like having them back there, because we've had them back there for a good minute, and they've both been, I've never worried about the safety spot. It's always been the corner spot, which obviously wasn't an issue at all this year. But yeah, Trace Ford and Trey Sterling are both immediately off because they got hurt. And so and
Trey Sterling's out September 19th, and he says he's out for the season. He ended up coming back for, I think, the OU game and the Baylor game.
Yeah.
But
so it's like we don't really know what to expect from the defense at that point. And then, offensively, you have guys like Jalen Warren step up. We have guys like Tay Martin step up. Presley was pretty good towards the end of the year. Not pretty good. He was really good once they started throwing him the ball more. And then the defense, we can rattle off the players. I don't know if there's really a point because I think they were all just exceptional. It sucks that we're losing some of them. Bernard Converse doesn't know if he's coming back next year. Who's the one that is for sure transferring, but he's playing in the bowl game?
We got Tanner McAllister.
That's who it was. Tanner McAllister.
Yeah.
He played really well this year. Brock Martin, obviously. Colin Oliver was a freshman All-American, which just isn't something you see come out of OSU. It's not, we don't play many freshmen. We're not, for lack of a better comparison, we're not Alabama. We're not Clemson. We're not getting 5 stars with guys that are just able to play right out the gate. That's usually not the case, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. But
yeah, totally
being able, was he a 3-star, borderline 4-star? But getting a guy to throw out there and be one of the focal points of your defense, lead. I think he was top 10 in sacks in the entire country at the end of the year. So as a freshman, I mean, that's just impeccable. I think the only thing we worry about is him leaving because he's just that good. But
yeah, we worry about him like transferring to go to Ohio State with Jim Knowles, even though he's from Oklahoma, right? Like, I don't see that happening.
I don't think it's gonna happen, but it's like, you get a good player like that, and it's a little,
a little worried,
Yeah, you get a little worried.
Yeah,
it's just
when your defensive coordinator just left. For blue blood. Yeah.
But there were a lot of guys that showed up this year that made us really fun to watch. And if you guys have listened to this podcast enough, you know that I hate watching defense. I just do. I'm not a defensive guy. I'm an offensive guy. But this year, it was enjoyable to watch our defense play. It was enjoyable that I could just sit back and go, like we get on defense and I'm like, all right, well, we'll probably get a sack this possession, pass breakup, and then it'll be 3rd and 8 and they have to figure something out. Because majority of the time that was the case. So long story short, surprised. Surprised is my word. At the end of this, probably gratifying. I would say this year was very gratifying. It was good. It was a good year to be an OSU football fan as a whole.
Yeah, I think my word is pretty much the same as yours, but I'm not going to use surprised. So I'll just use stunned. I was stunned how good our defense was the final 6 games of the season.
Go on thesaurus.com.
What?
Go on thesaurus.com. Look up a synonym.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm joking.
But stunned is my word.
Yeah.
For the final 6 games of the season, we didn't allow more than 100 points, and through the final 6 games of the season, and the final 2 games of the season are a total of 54 points allowed. But one of the games we won, of course, against OU. But if you take out, if you're just talking about like the 4 games against, collaboration of KU, West Virginia, TCU, and Tech, we're talking about a combined 23 points over 4 games.
Yeah.
We're talking about a team that basically didn't allow, 4 games, 75 points is the deal. And that's amazing. I mean, this Texas Tech team that we beat them 23-0. They just beat Mississippi State, by whatever that was, by 30 or something weird.
Yeah.
We put up 23 points on Tech, and Mississippi State only put 7 up with Mike Leach, the incredible offensive genius. So I'm stunned at how good our defense was through the final 6 games, because the final 6 games of the season, our defense is what it was keeping us in games and what was winning us games. Now, did we score 37 against OU? You better believe it. But 30 of those points were on offense. Actually, it might even be worse than that. But, because we, of course, have the Presley run back. And then I think we had a defensive touchdown, too, in that game, right? So
maybe
we did pretty dang good against OU. We beat them. It is our hallmark achievement on the season, for sure. But also the hallmark achievement is going to be if we can win 12 games. Because if we can win 12 games, I'm all of a sudden going, hang on a second. This was a really, really good season. And I think we do have a chance at that. But I'm stunned at how good our team was despite having Sanders at quarterback, which, let's be honest, I have not seen a quarterback play a whole season and have this many issues for Gundy. I have Cornelius. You take Cornelius over Sanders every day, right?
Yeah.
That one season. And you probably do with Rudolph every season, with Walsh, with, probably the only guys like Dax Garman. We're taking Sanders over, Garman and stuff. And now I'm not saying Sanders is a horrible quarterback. I'm just saying he is so much contrast and difference from what we've seen offensively, usually for Oklahoma State. But also, if I'm thinking about the whole season, probably another topic for the offseason thing, but do you want Sanders to come back a quarterback next year? Or would you rather see us with Shane or whoever? Because our defense is going to drop off, and we're going to need to score more. We beat the OU game on defense. The last play of the game, we sack Caleb Williams, right? That's how we win the. So and that wasn't the last play of the game. We have a game-winning field goal or we kneel it. That's our defense stood tall when they had a chance to win the game in the last seconds. So, but we know our defense isn't going to be the same next year. We're just losing too many guys. Malcolm Rodriguez, Trey Sterling, I think Colby Harvell-Peel. Christian Holmes is gone for sure.
Yep.
We may have
Tanner
McAllister is leaving. We may or may not have Bernard Converse back.
To answer your question, I don't think the defense is going to be as good as it was last year. I mean, we led the country in sacks. I don't think that's going to happen again. We did a lot of things that we've never done before, which is that's very hard to replicate, especially when the person that was calling that defense is leaving. Like that's tough to do. So I don't know. It's a tough selling point to be able to do the things last year on defense. So with that being said, yes, I would like to see the offense with Shane Illingworth. Because if you're talking about needing some sort of compensation, and I don't want to say for the lack of defense, but it's just not going to be the same. Now, for all we know, it could be just as good. We could be returning a lot of the same guys, and they're just able to plug and play, and you move on. I don't foresee that happening, and that's okay. I mean, it really is. You and I aren't expecting an All-American defense every single time that we play football every single year.
It would be nice, but not expecting it.
Right. And so I guess that's why I say that we've seen the guy for 3 years, and we've seen the guy not get better for 3 years. We've actually seen him statistically get worse. So at what point are you just like, no? And I guess that's my question. At what point are you just like, I'm sorry, Spencer Sanders, this just isn't cutting it anymore. 4 picks in the Big 12 championship against a defense not as good as the one you face in practice isn't cutting it.
Yeah.
It would have been different if our defense sucked. And he has to face this sucky defense in practice every single day. But he doesn't, and we know that. We know that he's going out and facing this defense. So I get that's my thing.
Yeah, because we know he's not. We either know he's not lighting it up in practice, or there's no way he can think he's going to be lighting it up in every single game. Depending on how he's doing in practice, I guess. My hope with next year is that because Sanders is coming back, we know that that's not going to. If he transfers, then it was clear that Shane Illingworth is going to get the start or something. But assuming he doesn't transfer, which I don't see that happening, and assuming that he comes back, of course, I don't think there's any way he doesn't start. Now, do I want him to? No. I've seen enough of Sanders. I feel like Shane's probably pretty darn good now, considering he's been in the system for 2 full seasons with OSU, right?
Yep.
He's played a handful. He played 2 games this year. He's played games. He played a bunch of games the year before or whatever. Forget how many. I feel like he'd be pretty darn good. And I also feel like he plays more of a prototypical kind of quarterback we've seen before when we need to score.
Yeah.
And asking Casey Dunn to redo our offense around Sanders, I think he did a great job with it, considering that we don't usually have kind of that, the non-pass happy attack, and we kind of went with way more of a running team than we would have before. But I just hope the leash is just super short with Sanders next year, because we know he's coming back. And I hope that the leash is just like, hey, man, listen, thanks. Love you. You're great. But this is the deal. And just, hey, if second something happens, it's your job to lose, but you can lose it pretty pretty easily. So
yeah,
it's just it's tough.
I'm with you. I feel like he should come out the year and start just out of. I mean, you have to have some sort of respect. You have to have some sort of knock-on effect, but the leash has got to be awfully short. It does. Like and again, I don't think that he would come out against, I don't know, whoever we open up the year with next year. I don't think he would come out against them next year and throw 3 picks in the first game. But if he does, you pull him. Like, honestly, I wouldn't have been opposed to pulling Spencer Sanders after the 4th pick, after the 3rd pick. And that's just me, because it's like, you know, the joke that a lot of football coaches tell, and sports coaches for that matter, is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. This is what we do with him. This is what we do every single game, which is what made the Oklahoma game insane. It was literally insane because we won a game. He threw 2 picks. Was it 2 picks or 3?
3.
He threw 3 picks. We aren't supposed to win that game. That is the definition of insanity. We are doing the exact same thing consistently and expecting him to be a different quarterback, and he's not. He's not. Now, trust me, I hope that I'm just flat out wrong next year. And I know you do too. But based off what we've seen, that's not the case.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why I'm like, what is stopping you from starting Shane Illingworth? Or hell, even Garrett Rangel, if you want to throw his name in there, if he just comes out and lights it up.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was 2 interceptions. I was reading that wrong.
2
interceptions against OU.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was looking up. I think Spencer Sanders is a quality human being, so it's nothing on that. And I don't think anyone's ever taking the stuff that we say in that fashion here. But what I will say is, he's a really decent guy, but he hasn't gotten better at OSU. And he also, when you make that many mistakes, and the only thing we need you to do is not make those mistakes, right? If Sanders went 90 yards into the game, put on like Hall of Fame resume type of drive for Oklahoma State if he finishes it off, right? If we get in the touchdown, you and I are having a much different discussion about Sanders. I cannot believe this dude threw 4 picks, but when it all came down to the end, it mattered. He won, right? And that's if Richardson gets in the end zone. That's if Jalen Warren comes in for one play and runs it in, right? That's what we're saying. We're not saying because Sanders didn't run it in himself in the last, 4 downs. But that's how we're talking about it. But that didn't happen. We got deflated. I think that's totally fine and understandable from everyone's point of view, because the only thing we needed is just you wouldn't have to be in the situation. You wouldn't have to be in the situation where you have to drive, 90 yards into the game to win if you don't throw 4 picks. You throw 3 picks, it's different. 2 picks, it's different. It's really we needed like a Russell Wilson his first year with the Seahawks type of deal. Just be a game manager. Just don't let their defense, get you whatever. Let's hand off, run the ball. We need like a Boise State style Sanders in the second half. And instead, we really couldn't afford to do that because we were just in such a deficit from the first half.
Yeah.
And we had to keep doing stuff that was outside of our element. But you and I also want to say both knew coming in, hang on a second, this may not be great. Like we may have issues. We were both very confident going into the Baylor game, which I don't think anyone would disagree with us. Like, the confidence was rightly placed in my mind just because, look at it. It's Oklahoma State. We had already beaten them by 10. Granted, it was on our own turf, but that was so early in the season. I thought we'd only gotten better. And they had their backup quarterback, right?
Yeah.
Like, all that type of stuff. But after the game's over, it's like, okay, we only need Sanders to do one thing. That was not make mistakes. Unfortunately, he did make those mistakes. And now you and I are talking about how we don't want him a quarterback next year to start out the season.
And for the record, like you said, you and I, like, this isn't some vendetta we have against Spencer Sanders where we're like,
Not
he's
at all.
a terrible person, blah, blah, blah. I am speaking, both of us are speaking strictly in a football sense.
Right.
And it's, I guess we would just expect him to perform better. That's all it boils down to. And we've seen it for 3 years. And we've seen the same play. I think that's the big thing is you and I and all these other OSU fans have seen the same player, even in the games we've won. Even in the game Spencer Sanders has looked great, he's still thrown multiple interceptions.
Yeah.
That's just not a recipe for success. I don't know if Shane would do better, but I'd like to see him try. And I remember, 2 years ago when you and I were still doing this podcast and we were like, how many turnovers would it take? This was after the Texas Tech game. How many turnovers would it take to pull Spencer Sanders? And I think you and I both said 3.
Yeah. We were wrong.
We were wrong multiple times. But I think he had 5 in that Tech game, if I'm not mistaken. It was like 2 fumbles and 3 picks.
Yeah, to sound right.
But yeah, it's frustrating, I think. And so I think going into next year, I'm even more – I couldn't even begin to think about a preview for next year. I'm even more baffled because transfer portal stuff and just all of that you have to take into effect now. I couldn't tell you how we're going to do next year.
I mean, it still is the weirdest statistic this guy is ever going to have in his entire career as a college football player and maybe pro player. TBD is in 2019 and in 2020, Spencer Sanders had 155 completions on 247 attempts, but doesn't. I mean, and the yardage is different. Like that's where I know ESPN didn't F this up. Is like the yardage is like he has 50, I can do math, 57, 55 more yards. I'm doing the math wrong here. 50 plus yards more in his freshman season than he does in his sophomore season. Regardless, his average yards per completion has gone down. Granted, he hasn't had Tylan Wallace this last season, who's an NFL player. Who knows? Tay Martin may be an NFL player. I think he will be, but who knows? His longest completion was 90 yards his freshman season. But his quarterback rating has gone down. But the other thing I think of when I go, okay, this is not a knee-jerk reaction you and I are having after the first 6 games he's had playing.
Right.
This is we've seen you play 3 years. We've seen you've had 800 plus attempts in college football passing. You've thrown for 6,540 yards. That's awesome. But you've had 834 attempts. That's enough for us to go, okay, you know what? Let's just see what else we got. Especially when we know how close we were this season. And it comes down to, I don't think it was play calling is play calling. I cannot get upset about play calling for the rest of my life because if I do, that just speaks to the head coach, right? I got to put it on the players because they're the ones that actually change out more often, right? I get that. But when it all comes down to the end of the day, play calling is not the end-all be-all because play calling did not throw the pick. Play calling may have chose where to throw it and when to throw it, but it's ultimately the quarterback who's the one on the field who makes the decision when to throw the ball exactly and how fast and, et cetera. Or, it's on the receiver for dropping and tipping in the air too. But we've seen enough film. We've seen enough tape. And we just want something. You want to wear a new pair of shoes, every so often, right? But if you wear the same pair of shoes for 60 days in a row and you go, you know what, I like to switch it up. Well, okay, that's a little soon. Maybe give it 6 months, right? But after you wear the same shoes for a year, you go, you know what? Whole year, no tread left. See what these things can do. Let's see what some new shoes can do. Let's see what a new quarterback could do for our offensive system. Let's see what the difference is.
I guess I feel like next year we're going to need it.
Yeah,
because and you and I are unsure what to make of Casey Dunn at this point, because we've acknowledged that we don't know if he's calling 100% of the plays. The system and the players that he's had haven't been up to what some of the other OCs have had. But he's, as far as we know, has just made some really bad play calls. Like you said, not, whether that was him or not calling a quarterback sneak the 5 times you could have called one. Right? I don't know if that was him, but we have nobody else to attribute that to. So
the quarterback sneak thing is like, okay, would the quarterback sneak have worked? Who knows? I would have liked to try it 1 out of the 7 tries. Yeah. But also that's you and I being armchair quarterbacks sitting here, with the remote or in the stands. And there's clearly a reason why he's the guy out there, making the play.
Well, and my thing is, it's like, if you didn't trust Sanders, hypothetically, if my dad made this case, my dad said, well, I just think they don't trust Spencer Sanders to run a quarterback sneak. And I'm like, well, that could be true. Put Shane Illingworth in. Like, what would Baylor's heads do if you brought Shane Illingworth in purely to run a quarterback sneak?
Explode out of control.
Like, they would be why'd you do that?
Ours would, but if Shane ends up fumbling the ball, trying to reach over the goal line, yours and I's heads would have exploded too.
Correct.
I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I'm trying to be more optimistic, and I think I'm really optimistic about next season. Colin Oliver, Colin Clay, 2 guys, both named Colin. One coming back after injury, the other one coming back after a historic freshman year, right? Trace Ford didn't play a game this season. Coming back next year with a lot to prove injury-wise, staying healthy for a full season, and a lot of draft stock potential. I mean, you Google the name Trace Ford, NFL draft is like one of the 3rd things that comes up in like a byline. You're reading through. Potential NFL guy. So those 3 guys, the Collin brothers and Trace Ford, or Collin guys, excuse me, they're not brothers, but the Collins and Trace Ford clearly have a lot to prove. I think our quarterback room is iffy at best, but I think we have better guys behind Sanders. I don't think Sanders is the only dude. And I think our running backs are going to be better starting the season. Better overall? I don't know. Jalen Warren was pretty darn incredible considering what my expectations were. But we've got some new recruits in, and I think our running backs are going to be okay. The key thing I'm curious about here is offensive line. We're going to lose. Josh Sill's gone.
Is that
Godlewski? Not confirmed yet. He could come back, but pretty much, he's been like the staple. Well, like if he can get drafted, go get drafted, especially if you're an offensive lineman. And it was like his 5th year anyway, so he'd be coming back as like a 6-year guy with a COVID exception type deal.
Yeah.
So he'll probably. I think he's probably gone. The defensive line, answer that. The corners, you gotta have somebody step up. Granted, we've never, Rodarius Williams was incredible. Bernard Converse and Christian Holmes were holding their own this year pretty darn well, it seemed, especially against OU, to be honest. There were a couple penalty flags that I don't think that they deserve to get called, and a couple other things could have gone different ways and been fine. But OU's got the best receivers in the Big 12 outside of us, I think. Maybe Texas has the best receiver overall in Worthy, but it didn't matter. They make it to a bowl game. So I feel pretty darn good about the team going into next season. Now, I'm not here for predictions until we get closer because everyone is going to want that offseason content. And I'm sure I'll redo it several times anyways. But I feel good. I feel optimistic going into next season. At the end of the day, I just wish this season, of course, ended differently, but I'm really stunned by how this season happened, finished.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, Jake, as always, thank you so much for joining me here on the latest episode of the CGA Tour Podcast. I was thinking about saying Bedlam Brother, but I did not. I Googled Bedlam Brother earlier today. It's still a website if anyone wants to check it out, bedlambrother.com. Anyways, maybe some new stuff on there soon. But Jake, thanks as always for joining, and we'll catch you guys again soon. Please follow out the CGA Tour on Twitter and Instagram if you haven't already. Peace.
See ya.
Oh, do you have any final thoughts? I didn't really throw it back to you at the end there.
No.
Here's to winning 12 games and Gundy having a great end of the season campaign against what seems to be a decent Notre Dame team. 5th in the country. If we beat the 5th team in the country, I'll be super hyped for like a week. I still would rather beat OU than beat Notre Dame in the bowl game, but still super hyped. Thanks so much for listening again. I'll catch you guys again soon. Peace.